Hello everyone and welcome to the October webinar from RELO Andes. For those of you not familiar with RELO Andes, we are the Regional English Language Office here at the U.S. Embassy in Lima, Peru. The RELO office is in charge of all things having to do with English language programs throughout Spanish-speaking South America. My name is Maggie Steingraber. I am an English language fellow who is based here in Lima, Peru. I will walk you through how to use the webinar material in case you're not familiar with it. I am also the contact who will be on your registration when you came on, so if you have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to contact me directly. All right, then we'll get started with today's presentation. The presenter today is Ellen. She is joining us from Ecuador. Ellen, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Ellen. How are you?
Great. Now I'm ready to switch screens. I don't see the little box. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Let me tell you how delighted I am to be here with you today to share insights and strategies for success when you take an English proficiency exam. My name is Ellen Comas, and this year I'm an English language fellow in Quito, Ecuador. Today's topic is TOEFL iBT success strategies and tips. So why did I choose this topic? Well, let me tell you that to become a credentialed teacher in California to teach in the K-12 public schools, there are a multitude of state-mandated proficiency exams. I'm happy to report that I passed every exam. But to be successful required me to come up with my own game plan and approach, which was challenging to say the least. The purpose of this webinar is to share with you some important tools so you too can be successful. So let me first ask you, why are you interested in learning more about the TOEFL iBT? You can respond to our poll that you'll see on the screen in just a moment. Your options are future study in an English-speaking university, employer requirement, deciding which English proficiency test to take, improving your test-taking skills, or perhaps some other reason. So Maggie, go ahead and put up the poll if you haven't already. I think you have, right?
Yep, it's up. We've got about 55% of people have responded, now up to 60%. So I'm going to leave it open for just another 5 seconds. Okay, Ellen, are you able to see the results? So we have 45% said future study in English-speaking university, 20% said employer requirement, 6% are deciding which English proficiency test to take, 18% improve test-taking skills, and 10% other.
Excellent. Well, we've got a variety of reasons, and obviously studying in an English-speaking university, this is a great test to really fine-tune your skills, and these are great skills for any purpose that you might have for focusing on English. So I'm really delighted that we have a wide range of participants. So we can move on now. Before we get started, I'd like to first introduce you to two students, Student 1 and Student 2. Why do you think Student 1 looks so worried? I'd like you to take a moment and write in your thoughts or comments into the chat box. And Maggie, you can let us know what some of our participants might have to say.
Dre says it's because he didn't study. JD says it's because he doesn't know the subject. Maria says he doesn't feel prepared. So does Sam. He also says not prepared. Not sure about the answers. Patricia says he's very nervous. He's concerned. He didn't study. He left everything to the last minute, is what Paula said. He doesn't know. He's nervous. Yeah, a lot of people saying he's nervous because he didn't study or prepare.
Correct. Excellent. Well, there's no reason that any of you have to be in that situation. So let's move on to the next student. Why do you think Student 2 looks so delighted and pleased? And once again, go ahead and input your comments into the chat box.
She took the time to study, is what Cecilia said. Javier says she succeeded. Jose, she studied a lot. She's well prepared. Marcelo thinks it's because she enjoys the language. She's ready. She's happy. Uh, she was told the test is not a monster. That's fun. She is organized, prepared. She loves taking tests. She has many years studying English. She
Perfect.
achieved what she expected.
Excellent. So great. Those are good reasons too. So now we're ready to take a look at our webinar objectives. They are to review the TOEFL IB test content, provide you with skill building tips, and gain confidence so you can be successful. And today's agenda will include understanding the TOEFL IBT, 6 strategies and tips for success, and suggestions for test day. So as you may already know, the TOEFL IBT, or IBT stands for Internet-Based Test, is a difficult exam. But the more you know about it, the more comfortable you will be. The TOEFL test of English as a foreign language is an English proficiency test produced by an American company called Educational Testing Service, which is also known as ETS. It's a test that measures your English reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills, and your ability to succeed in an academic setting in an English-speaking country. Displayed on the screen is a chart which shows you the structure of the TOEFL exam. As you can see, the 4 different language skills are reflected, including integrated tasks. The integrated tasks ask test takers to read, listen, and then speak in response to a question, listen and then speak in response to a question, or read, listen, and then write in response to a question.
Ellen, the writing is cut off. Could you read what the writing says because we can't see it?
Let me see. You know, I can't read it either. It's cut off for me too. So I'm not sure how to change that.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. The writing below, from my recollection, is there are 2 components. There are 2 different types of questions in the writing task. One is an independent and the other is integrated. And I believe the writing, I think, is 30 minutes. On the chart, should you download a copy of the PowerPoint, you will be able to see the chart in full and clearly, because I was able to see it clearly myself. I don't know why it isn't working that way. Anyway, the test can be completed at one time in about 4.5 hours, which includes check-in. And looking more closely at the chart, you can see that each language skill has different time frames. For example, the test dedicates 20 minutes to speaking, while the time provided for reading might be up to 80 minutes. So let's move on. My screen looks a little bit confused. I don't know, Maggie, are you seeing the screen clearly, or is
We
it?
see it as you see it.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. I don't know how that's happening, but below you can see a chart, which the purpose was to let you know that before you take the test, it's a good idea to know the score you need to achieve. As you can see in the chart, each section has a score of 30 for a total overall score of 120. For those of you who anticipate university study, each university requires non-native speakers to get a specific score. For those of you who might be taking the TOEFL to satisfy an employer requirement, know what your score needs to be. For example, in Ecuador, the Ministry of Education requires all public school teachers to obtain a B2 level as defined in the Common European Framework of Reference. A B2 level means a minimum score of 72. So moving on, let's see. There are a lot of resources available to help you learn about the test, and one good source is the Educational Testing Service or TOEFL website, which is displayed on the screen. And this appears to be visible, so that's a good resource you may want to jot down for future reference. Let's move on. Once again, time for a poll. I'd like to ask how many of you have taken the TOEFL iBT test before, and you can indicate that. The options are that yes, you've taken it, or no, you haven't taken that, and that would be a poll. I see the poll is open, and so results must be coming in. Maggie, you can report back to us on that.
Yeah, we'll
Excellent.
share the
Well, then,
result. So I think you can't see it, but we have 11% say yes, they've taken it, and 89% say no, they have not.
excellent. Well, I then hope that this webinar gives you some insights, I think it will, on things to be aware of as you're preparing for the test, and hopefully in a very enjoyable and engaging way. So let's move on. Whether you have or haven't taken the TOEFL before, I want you to take a moment to share with your partner, if you have a partner, and I do realize some of you may not, what skills in the TOEFL iBT you'd like to strengthen. In any case, you can write your comments right into the chat box. Some of you may have a very clear idea of what you'd like to focus on, and others might not yet, and that's okay, because it takes time to recognize your strengths and weaknesses. Maggie, what are you seeing that participants are reporting?
I'm seeing Maria Veronica say that she wants to strengthen her reading. Nadine says writing, speaking, writing with 3 exclamation points from Andrea. Listening, speaking and writing. Looks like speaking and writing are the overwhelming choice here. And specific vocabulary is one. Tips on approaching the reading questions. Speaking, grammar. Speaking, writing, reading, reading, speaking and
Great.
listening. All of
Excellent.
them.
Okay. We're definitely going to be focusing on many of what you suggest, many of the topics you've just identified, so that's great. Let's move on. Now let's take a look at the strategies and tips for success that we'll be covering today. Now first, be prepared. Next, read everything, listen to everything. After that, learn to take good notes. Next, plan before you write or speak. Next, speak clearly and be organized. And finally, practice, practice, practice. Let me first ask you an interesting question. If you've never taken the TOEFL before, and as I recall, quite a few of you, quite a high percentage, have not taken it before, how long should you give yourself to prepare? So it's poll time again. Your options are 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 2 months, or 6 months to a year. And I see the poll is open, so go ahead and input what your thoughts are at this preliminary stage as to what you think you'll need to spend in terms of preparing. What do you find, Maggie? Okay.
All right, I'll put the results up. I'll read them to you. So 10% said 1 to 2 weeks, 56% said 1 to 2 months, and 34% said 6 months to a year.
Okay, great. A range of options. I'll explain more in tip number 1. And the purpose of this tip is to emphasize the need to be prepared. And to be prepared, you need time. How much? Well, that was just the question I asked. As you can tell, there were quite a lot of opinions about how much time. And the bottom line is that meaningful preparation takes many weeks. Many sources say at least 8 weeks, and some instructors recommend from 6 months to a year. But honestly, it all depends on your current level and abilities. Let me say that when you sit down at the computer to take the test, nothing should be a surprise. You should know every reading question, every listening question, every speaking task, and every writing task. You should know exactly what you have to do to answer every question properly. And do not try to prepare for the test alone. At the very least, you'll need a textbook. And you'll see on the screen I have the little red book right there in the lower right-hand corner. Remember, that's your new best friend. Don't forget that you'll be helped greatly with a book, a textbook. So now let me ask you a multiple choice question. Which of the following have you done during the past few days? And your options are read the paper, listen to the radio, watch TV or the internet. And Maggie will get the poll up, or actually the multiple choice poll, and we'll get some feedback from you all as to what you've been able to do.
All right, I'll share the results. 51% have read the paper, 43% have listened to the radio, and 88% have watched TV or the internet.
Excellent. So you can see that many of you have interacted with the media in one way or another. Now, wouldn't it be cool if you had spent this time reading, listening, and watching in English? Which leads us to tip number 2. Read everything and listen to everything. I cannot stress this enough. When you are preparing for the TOEFL, it's not good enough just to listen to and read things that you enjoy or are interested in. You need to read widely and build your vocabulary. On the TOEFL, you will read passages or listen to lectures on everything from astronomy and American history to psychology and biology. There are some excellent internet resources, and I strongly encourage you to read and listen every day. As you can see on my slide, I listed 5 sources. The Voice of America Learning English website, the NPR News website, Newsella, National Geographic News, and BBC News. My absolute favorite is the Voice of America Learning English website, which is a multimedia source of news and information. Programs are read 1/3 slower than normal English speed. Online texts with audio lets people read, listen, and build their English skills. For those of you who might find this site too easy, you can check out the regular Voice of America website. Another great website that provides you with a multimedia source of current events across a broad range of subject areas is the National Public Radio website. On a separate note, for those of you interested in bringing current event programming into the classroom, I've displayed a related public radio site called listenwise.com that offers free audio stories along with listening questions and worksheets for teachers. 3 additional websites that cover a wide range of high-interest news and information that you should consider visiting are the Newsella website that offers a comprehension quiz for every article and allows you to choose your reading level. The National Geographic News website, with its high-quality visual images, is available for you. And finally, BBC News for those of you who also want to practice listening to English rather than American accents. By reading and listening to a wide variety of subjects, you will not only build your vocabulary, but improve your reading skills. Before we move on to our next tip, I'd like you to think about the last time you needed to take notes for a class or jot down important information that someone was telling you. How did it go? Did you get the information you needed? What could you have done differently? Now take a moment to speak to your partner, if you have any partners, to choose which of the 3 options on our poll describe what a good note-taker should do. No partner? Go ahead and respond to the poll. Your options are write down everything, only write down words the note taker knows, or only write essential information. I see the poll is open, and I hope you're inputting your responses. What do you say, Maggie?
We are at about 18% said write down everything. 17% said only write words that you know. 87% only essential information.
Great. So very interesting. The response actually was only write down essential information. Most of you did get that. Let me move on. As you've just said, the key is to only write down necessary information, which leads us to tip number 3, which is learn to take good notes. In each section where listening is required, you can only listen to the clip once. You cannot go back and listen to it again and again. You will then have to answer questions on what you heard in the listening section, speak about what you heard in the speaking section, or write a response based on what you heard in the writing section. Therefore, taking good notes is important. People who take good notes score higher. You will improve your skills if you practice, and the websites I told you about are great resources to use for becoming a better note taker. For example, as you study and listen to the different websites, you can practice identifying the main idea of a particular article that you might be reading or listening to, finding supporting details, summarizing main points, or contrasting and comparing opinions. When you're finished listening, you can go back and compare your notes to the written text provided on the websites. If you use symbols or shorthand while you're taking notes, or devise your own system, you'll be able to take notes more quickly. So we're just about ready to move on to our next tip. But once again, let me ask you to take a moment to chat with your partner, if there is a partner. I'd like you to think about a time when you went shopping without a shopping list. What happened? Did you remember everything that you were looking for? Take a moment to share your thoughts in the chat box. And Maggie, what are you finding in terms of feedback?
JD says that she forgot things. Marcelo, he spends more time than he needs. Paula forgot stuff, spent too much time. Patricia bought extra things that I didn't need and forgot things that I really needed. Spent too much time, bought things you don't need. You get confused. Takes too long. It's a mess. You just have to think from zero about what to buy. Need more time, forget what you need.
Great. Well, those are all great responses. And as you can tell, without the list, some of you might have wandered around and didn't end up getting the things that you really needed. Well, I think what you're really saying is that without planning, it's hard to accomplish what you really want. And you'll see that the same can be said about our next tip. So you'll see that tip number 4 indicates that you should plan before you write or speak. There are 2 writing tasks on the TOEFL iBT, and organizing your ideas in a clear and coherent way is extremely important. The good news is that essay writing tends to follow the same format, and understanding this format will help you in almost every section of the TOEFL. Before you start writing, brainstorm or plan your ideas and draft a simple outline. The key components of any outline include introduction, body, that might be 2 to 3 paragraphs, conclusion. Let's take a closer look at what your outline can look like. As you can see, there are 3 distinct parts. The first part is the introduction, which is shown in sort of a greenish blue. This introduces your essay and tells your reader that what you're going to talk about. The second part of your essay is the body. which is shown in pink. It has 2 to 3 paragraphs that support your topic or opinion. Think of each paragraph as expressing just one thought, and the first sentence of the paragraph explains what it is about or the reason for your opinion. The rest of the paragraph uses clear, specific examples or details to illustrate your opinion. The last part of your essay is the conclusion, which is shown in sort of an orangish yellow, and it's a paragraph that summarizes and restates the key points in your essay. Now that you've seen the outline approach to writing, you'll be able to use the same type of format in the speaking section, since you'll also need to state an opinion and support your opinion with clear, specific examples. And last but not least, don't forget about transitional words and phrases. They help make your writing easier to read by establishing clear connections between ideas and ensuring that sentences and paragraphs flow together smoothly. Memorizing a list of these words and practicing them in your writing would be very helpful. So as you practice for the writing or speaking section of the test, here are some questions you can ask yourself. Did I answer the question being asked? If there is a choice, did I identify it? Did I write clearly? Did I use words correctly? Did I organize my ideas clearly and coherently? So in anticipation of the next tip, let me ask you a true-false question that I'd like you to discuss with your partner, again, if there is a partner. You can go ahead and respond in the chat box. The question is, the best way to prepare for the speaking section is to read and listen to lots of sample responses. So go ahead and type into the chat box, and Maggie, let us know what you find.
Lots of true. True. We got 5 trues and 2 falses.
Just
More
a few.
trues are coming in. Nope, now they are true. Lots of trues.
Lots of trues.
What we could do is we could do a hand raising, and that way we can see a percentage if you'd like. So if you remember the hand raising from the very beginning, if you think true, raise your hand. So at this point, raise your hand if you think true. We're at 30%, 33, 34%, 35%, 36, 37, 38. All right, 40%. 40% say true. And just for comparison, I'll put hands down. If you think false, raise your hand if you think false. 10%, 12, 13, 14, 15. 17% say false.
Okay, well that's very interesting. Speaking, reading, and listening is certainly important, but interesting about this is the answer would have been false because you also need to practice speaking. So let's take a look at our next slide, which displays tip number 5. And I'm going to go on to this, which is speak clearly and be organized. On the TOEFL, you need to speak clearly and be understood, and that's where practice comes in based on our last true-false question that I had asked. Your pronunciation doesn't have to be perfect, but your fluency, or in other words, the way you sound, needs to be natural and confident. Some ways you can practice are to record yourself so you can hear yourself speak. Most laptops and computers come with recording software. Another idea is to practice in the mirror for, let's say, 1 minute about topics that are familiar to you, like your best friend, favorite movie, the food you enjoy eating, and so on. And don't forget that you can always practice with your friends or colleagues who are also planning to take the TOEFL or any other English proficiency exam. And while you're practicing, avoid frequent pauses or using filler words like or But keep in mind that while your pronunciation and fluency are important, the organization of your response matters most. As I previously pointed out in tip number 4, which is plan before you write or speak, there is a typical format for responding to questions. Let's take a look at an example of how to quickly outline your ideas before you begin speaking. Remember, on the test, you'll have from 15 to 30 seconds to prepare, depending on the question. First, come up with your main idea. Then, think of a few examples or reasons. Provide some details, and then sum up your responses in a short conclusion. It's time for another true-false question. If you'd like to discuss it with your partner, go ahead, but the question is, if I study too much, I'll get confused and bored. Go ahead and share responses in the chat box. Maggie, what are you seeing regarding the question?
I'm seeing a mix, so I think we'll do the hand raising again. That way we can see a percentage.
Okay.
So first, let's try false, or true, sorry. So if you think it's true, raise your hand. All right, we have 23 people say true. Oh, up to 27, 28 now. 30 people say true. Okay, so yep, about 20% of people say they think true. So I'm going to lower hands now and raise your hand if you think false. Looks like a lot more people say false. Up to about 40% of the people say false.
False.
And a lot of people have put into the chat box, depends.
Depends. Well, let me say the answer would be false because it's not possible to study too much. So moving on, I want you to know that tip number 6 is practice, practice, practice. And that's the best tip I can give you. Students are always looking for a secret they can learn to help them better prepare for the TOEFL. And this is it. Once you know the TOEFL inside and out, the only thing that can help you get better is to keep practicing it. So do all the tests in your textbook. Remember, I previously suggested that you get a textbook, and the ETS official guide has 3 tests, and other books do have more. And do all the tests on the ETS TOEFL website, and there are 5. And that means that you should do at least 8 practice tests before you sit down to take that TOEFL exam. So as you can tell, you're all going to be very busy from now until test day. And what about test day? So this next slide shares some suggestions with you about how to do your best on test day. Most importantly, learn to relax. Some things you can do to get ready for test day are to visit the test center ahead of time. Make sure you know where you're going and how long it's going to take for you to get there. The last thing you need is a traffic jam on the way to the test. Don't cram the day before the test. Just relax and rest. Get a good night's sleep. During the test, take deep breaths and only concentrate on the question you're answering. And remember, you can always take the test again. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Now get to work and break a leg. But what do I mean by saying break a leg? If you know, go ahead and share your responses in the chat box. And I will explain in a moment, but let's see if any of you have some feedback on what that idiomatic expression might mean. Maggie, what have you got?
A lot of people say it means good luck.
Yeah.
To be relaxed, to succeed. Well, overwhelmingly, I would say the response is good luck.
Absolutely. It's an expression that has traditionally been used in the theater in the United States. Before a performance, actors are often nervous and at times superstitious. They don't want to do or say anything that could jeopardize a successful performance. So rather than saying good luck to express good wishes, there has been a tradition in the theater of saying break a leg, which means the same as good luck. So my parting words to you all are to do your best and break a leg. I want to thank you so much for joining me and happy studying. Should you want to follow up with any further resources to prepare for your English proficiency exam, I've listed some here, and if you download the PowerPoint, you'll be able to have that for you to take a closer look. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. We have a couple of questions that have come through. The first is just, what do you mean by the word cram?
Excellent question. Cram is an expression I would perhaps bordering on slang, so I apologize for that. Cram is to stuff everything into a tiny little space. The space is probably more characterized in this instance as time. So to put all your studying into a tiny little space of time and not giving yourself the necessary time to truly prepare in depth. And so cram means not giving yourself enough time.
Okay. A question came up way in the beginning. If you could clarify what an integrated question is.
Integrated question is a question that is not just one domain. As you recall, there are four domains in English teaching and English education: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And some tests are looking at only one domain at a time. We're trying to test your proficiency in one area. The focus of the TOEFL is to integrate the different domains, which is probably more reflective of real life. In real life, you don't just listen and you don't just speak. You're doing multiple tasks at the same time. You're listening and speaking, or you're reading and speaking. So the integrated task is when two activities from two separate domains are combined, and you're asked to respond in a broader way.
Okay.
Okay.
And there was a question, I think it was from Francisco, on if the TOEFL is always out of 120.
Yes, the TOEFL iBT, internet-based test, is always out of 120. There used to be a paper-based TOEFL test, which I understand is only available in some countries. My impression is that they may be trying to phase that out, and it has a different scoring system. And there's also a TOEFL Junior, which is for, I believe, high school students, which probably has a different scoring system, but the iBT is based on 120.
And Pedro has a question also on scoring, on what would a minimum score be for reaching a C1 level?
Excellent question. There is a chart that exists. My personal focus has been on the B2 level because the municipality of Quito teachers that I work with in my fellowship are targeting a B2 level. The C1 is higher. The B2 is a 72. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's in the high 80s, but I would encourage you to look that up online. There are charts that do it's probably on the ETS website, where they would show you how it corresponds to the scoring for the European frame of reference. Sorry, I don't know that.
And Ramona has said, all right, she says, I've taken the test 2 times. The first time I got an 83 and I prepared myself for the test, prepared for 2 weeks for the test. After 2 years, I took it again and I got a 72. And I had 3 months of preparation. I was very disappointed. Why do you think this happens? So the first time was an 83, and the second time she got a 72.
Interesting question. Well, every year they are changing the test. The test is never the same, and they're expanding it and improving it, at least from uh, an examiner point of view, not from a test taker point of view, but I believe they're probably making it more rigorous over time. That's just my theory and guess about it, and being more comprehensive. Um, so perhaps there's a greater focus on a broader range of topics over time. I'm sure that there's some kind of explanation as to how the tests have evolved over time. But that's a good question. The good news, the way I would look at it, is if you got an 83 once, I'm sure that you're capable of getting an 83 again. And I think it's probably a matter of really immersing yourself in English. And that means listening to those websites every single day, at least a half an hour and probably an hour a day, and speaking with all your friends in English and reading a lot in English every day and listening to the news in English and just making your world English to the extent possible. But the good news is congratulations on the 83. That's a fantastic score. And I am certain that you will have a fantastic chance and an excellent chance of getting that same score again.
Esteban has a question on how important pronunciation is in the test.
Pronunciation itself is a good question. It is clear to the test providers or educational testing service that you are not a native speaker. They understand that, and they are not expecting you to speak like someone who was born and raised in the United States. However, they do want you to be confident and to speak in a natural way. So do your best to speak clearly and listen, practice. And if you are listening to websites and articles and speakers in English, movies, and again, the Voice of America website that will allow you to listen to an article in English, you're picking up on the pronunciation, you're hearing it, and you can just be more aware of it. But the main point is to be clear and organized, and if you think of that, you will be successful.
All right, and there's a couple questions, I think mostly about time management for studying. Is it necessary to do all the reading that you suggest? How do you manage your time in preparing for the test?
It is a good question. And is it necessary to do what I suggested? I will say the practice tests are very, very important because you learn a lot about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you're actually getting a real chance to see what you'll actually be facing when you take the test. The one thing I do say is do take the practice tests. In terms of time management, you've got to set time aside, whether it's every day or every weekend, but perhaps a plan is an hour a day to spend on test prep. The TOEFL Educational Testing Service website has an 8-week study guide or plan. It's like a planner that actually is very good, and it's one of my handouts, but you could also get it by going to the Educational Testing Service website. And it's very nice because it breaks down for you almost on a weekly basis what you should be doing and gives you like assignments and activities, and it's over an 8-week period. But the bottom line is you do have to set time aside and figure out what's realistic for you in your life. And if you need to plan over a 6-month period, then be realistic about it. But the point is it does take time. And if you can do it in 2 months, wonderful. If it takes 6 months, it doesn't matter. The point is to gain the knowledge and the skills that are necessary so you're ready to take the test when the time comes to sit down and take the test. All
right, there's a couple questions on the different types of TOEFL. One is, what is the CBT TOEFL test? And the other is, can you explain the difference between the IBT and the paper-based?
Okay, paper-based. CBT, I do not know what the CBT is. I haven't heard of that acronym. Computer-based test. CBT must be computer-based test. Perhaps it's the same, and I don't know if they were using that terminology before, but it sounds the same. I'm sorry, I haven't heard of that term or that reference before. On to your other question. What's the difference between the TOEFL iBT and the TOEFL paper-based? Well, good question, and I asked that very question myself last year when I started gaining experience with this exam. The paper-based test is probably what was available from the beginning before computers, because this test has been around for quite a while. But I will say the paper-based test is being phased out in many countries, so it may or may not be available in your country. The difference is that the internet-based test, you sit at the computer and you are typing all your answers into the computer, and the paper-based is no computer, I believe. I believe it is paper and pencil, and you sit down and take the test. There's a difference in timing too. The IBT is about a 4-hour test, and the paper-based, I believe, is something like 2 or 2.5 hours. And I think those are probably primarily the biggest differences. The biggest, I guess, challenge or difficulty for you is that the paper-based test may not be available in your country, and not only that, you need to determine the purpose of why you're taking the TOEFL. If you're targeting university study in the United States, I believe that they would require the IBT and they would not accept the paper-based test. So you need to research the purpose of your test and if it will be acceptable for the purposes that you have in mind.
And going along that, do you know if the test has an expiration date from when you take it, how good the results are for?
Very, very good question. Based on what I've seen, the test apparently has an expiration date of 2 years, or it's valid for a 2-year period, and then I understand that it has to be taken again. Again, it depends on what the purpose is. If it's for university admission and you get admitted to the university, I'm not sure that you have to take the test again because you've accomplished your goal. However, if it's for an employer, in some cases, some organizations or agencies require that their teachers take the test, and I have heard that they have to resubmit every 2 years if they take the test for their organization, but it's really up to the organization to determine or tell you if that's a requirement for them.
Okay, and Jonathan wanted to know if you recommend studying for people to study by themselves or if they should go to an institute, or what's the best way to prepare?
That's a really good question. I think the option depends a lot on what your personal situation is and if you have the time or the resources to be able to have different options. It is certainly possible and realistic to study, but you must have a textbook. I would never recommend that you study alone with no guidance. A textbook is really important, and Educational Testing Service has one, and there are many other publishers that have made available really excellent guidebooks. My opinion is to get several of the guidebooks and use them and contrast and compare their approaches to study. Now, in terms of taking a course, I think that's also a great idea, but I would take the course and I would also have that guidebook, because you are using multiple resources to help you gain the most in-depth knowledge that you can in the short time that you're going to be spending preparing. And the more resources, the better. But if you have the ability and the option to take a test preparation course from an established, recognized organization, I think it's a good idea. It gives you more exposure and contact with the English language, and that's what it's about, is to immerse yourself in the world of English for the time that you're preparing.
Jorge has a question on if you fail an exam one time, how long should you wait before the next one, before taking it again?
I believe that that's a good question. You can take the test as many times as you want to. If you failed, well, I would just get back to studying and take it probably if you feel that you're ready and you the let me back up here. The advantage of taking the test actually is that it gives you a very good diagnostic on how you did. You will you'll immediately see what your areas of strength and weakness were. And based on that, you can figure out what you need to focus on and emphasize. Based on that, make yourself a plan. And if you feel that you can really do the review and study necessary in 2 weeks or a month, then why not reschedule to take that test again as soon as it's offered, because it's not offered every day. You need to sign up for it. And when I looked at the schedule the last time, it seemed to me it was offered a couple times a month, at least in Ecuador. I don't know what the situation is in other countries, but it's a great opportunity to see how you did, check out the diagnostics, figure out what area you should focus on, revisit it, strengthen those areas of weakness, and get yourself back to the test because it's fresh in your mind, and again, you're focusing and immersing yourself in a world of English, which is all to the good.
Okay, we're running out of time, so we're just going to do one more question, and that is on tips for vocabulary, to get your vocabulary ready for the test, if you have any suggestions.
Okay. As I mentioned in the webinar, it's excellent to be able to listen and read the websites that are news oriented, for example, Voice of America or NPR, because they offer a wide range of subjects. And as you read the articles, you will be gaining knowledge and expanding your vocabulary, because you aren't going to be able to understand the subject matter without dealing with these new vocabulary words. But a tip that I would recommend is, as you're reading the articles, keep a journal. And I would even keep a journal by topic areas. For example, if you're reading about biology or American history, or perhaps entertainment even, keep the words by category and make a list and go over them and review them as you learn them. And again, read widely across a wide range of subject areas, and keep your journal with vocabulary words and add to it as you keep reading.
Thank you very much, Ellen. We are out of time, but thank you so much. There were a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to. Thank you for all your help. A lot of very nice comments from people that they learned a lot from the presentation, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, we hope you enjoyed the presentation. We do RELO Andy's webinars once a month, so next month we are going to be doing something a little different. We're going to have an expert panel with two people in the field, Karina Garcia and Lisa Mann, who are both based here in Lima, Peru. We are going to be taking questions on ELT, that's English language teaching, from you, from the public. So if you have anything you would like to know, there's no specific topic. So any question that you have related to English language teaching or learning, we are going to send out a place for you to ask us questions, and we will spend the next webinar for 1 hour just answering any question from you related to English teaching or learning. And again, we'll have a couple of experts here that can answer your questions. That will be in November, on Wednesday, November 23rd from 3 to 4, that is Peru time. So again, we are RELO Andes, that is the Regional English Language Office based out of Lima, Peru. You can connect with us if you would like to stay in the loop on further webinars. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. We also record all of the webinars and put them on YouTube. So if you go onto YouTube and just search RELO Andes webinars, you will find the recorded version of this webinar as well as all of our past webinars. If you would like to get on the mailing list, you can contact us at the email address on the bottom there, reloandes@state.gov, and we will send you the link for how to get on our mailing list to be in the loop on future webinars and events. Again, you can also contact me through the confirmation email that you received from GoToWebinar. So thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you.